Nobody's doing that. It's going, this is the thing that's going to make you angry, and if this makes you angry, here are some more things that make you angry, and that's you know what I mean. So if I could do anything, sometimes I wish I could reach through the screen at somebody and go, look, I don't hate you, I just wish you would shut up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, completely.
Today I'm speaking to Thomas Willett, who is he's the sort of co-organiser. I'm sure there are other people involved we can talk about, but Thomas runs Equality Amplified, which is an advocacy group for LGBTQI rights. And it's great to have you here. Hi, Thomas. How you doing?
I'm very well, Freda. How are you doing?
Oh, it's good that you're there. I thought you'd gone then. So
no, still very much here.
So yeah, we've sort of followed each other on social media for a couple of years now, I think it is. And I think you have noticed, like a lot of us have noticed, that the sort of intensity of hate and intolerance and just casual bigotry that has started to come into our sort of social media space. So, I just wanted to ask you, how do you cope with that? Because obviously, if you're putting yourself out there, you're trying to put positive information out, like stuff about, LGBTQ History Month. How do you manage that?
It's difficult, and I think the testament to that is the amount of people that we've seen, and the amount of our friends and colleagues, the amount of people that we speak to that have dropped off of social media just within the last year has been a lot. And we have lost a few really good, strong voices, particularly on X as well, because they haven't been able to cope with just the increasing torrent of hate and abuse that just gets chucked at us constantly. How do I personally cope with it? I mute as much as I can.
Good idea.
I think, and I just try my best not to engage with particularly the anonymous trolls. Those are the ones who always flock to my posts, no matter, and it could be, I can post anything, like it doesn't matter if I'm posting something maybe more personal or like a gym progress picture on Twitter or something. They'll still comment like
I think
homophobic rubbish.
The thing I've noticed with people that are LGBTQ, we do enjoy body positivity and sex positivity, and I think for a lot of these people it's alien to them, the idea of celebrating yourself, because I think the reason we do it as well, the reason I do it is because I went through a long period of not liking myself. I didn't like my body. I had a period where I just could not look at myself naked or even be intimate with somebody. So now that I feel that confidence, now that I feel like I can be more relaxed with myself, I feel like I want to share that, not because I want attention for its own sake, because I want to signal to other LGBTQI people that this is possible. And I think that's really important. I mean, I love seeing your gym pictures, because to me that is like your work. It's like a progress report. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's something that actually going to the gym has actually been a really good sort of distraction and sort of release for me. It's been that sort of constant thing doing 5 times a night where I can just sort of unplug, ignore what's going on social media, and just focus on myself. Because a lot of times a lot of people who are quite active on social media, especially within activism spaces, they do give a lot of themselves to the cause, and when you're getting these torrent of sort of abuse and hate, it's hard to deal with that, and it's hard to be resilient in the face of such hatred. So having that outlet of like going to the gym, going for a run, or whatever it may be, is a really good way to remain connected to myself, remain healthy and active, and not get sort of sucked into that sort of void. Because very early on in sort of my journey into activism, I did find myself getting sucked into this void of circular conversations with these anonymous trolls who aren't really out there to have genuine conversations with people, but they're just out there to sea lion and waste our time, and just to spread just abuse and bigotry, essentially, all from the safety of their anonymity. And I was just getting sucked into it, and I was just found myself spending hours. Oh, it's so easy to spending hours and hours replying to these trolls, and realizing that it's not helping anyone by entertaining these people, because they're never going to change their mind, no matter what evidence, no matter what fact you present to them.
Yeah, I was going to add. I mean, it feeds them in a way. I mean, some of the bigger accounts. I won't mention any names. Maya Forstater and Helen Joyce. They actually they would not exist so powerfully online but for the pushback with them. But it's really hard not to see that kind of bigotry and fight it, because the way social media feels to me is it's my space, and it doesn't belong to them. It belongs to everyone. And I hate the fact that people leave social media spaces, because I feel like those people win. Like the enemy wins when we retreat. But I can totally understand why, especially people that have got mental health issues. I would recommend they come away, because I've seen.
100%.
Even myself, and I've told people about it. Last year I had a really bad time. I was drinking a lot, and I spiraled, and it just got really bad with my sleep pattern. I was like, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be frightened to look at my phone because of things do you know what I mean? That feeling of dread. So there's that balance to be struck with the, activism, like trying to fight your corner. And knowing which battles to pick, because a lot of them, like you were saying about these anonymous trolls, that a lot of them are totally pointless. It's but
they're just there to waste your energy and time.
But then that's all
it is.
There's another element I wanted to talk about, and it's like we fight amongst ourselves as a community sometimes, because like when I was going onto the media, I know I made some pretty bad decisions about some of the shows that I did go on, and I am willing to take that criticism, but I felt like, well, I'm just trying to break the echo chamber. It's okay, like talking in Discord groups about how you want to change society, but you're not going to do that by being amongst your people that you only talk to those people, and there's no outer signal, because that's why I went on Talktv and I went on GBnews. And that was really hard, because obviously the whole setup is not there to benefit you.
No,
you're going into a media circus, and you've got to be aware of that when you do it. And I was the reason I brought this up is because Ash Shakar recently from Novara Media was talking about, this is the thing that's leading to the rise of the far right, because people feel disempowered. And so, and I just wanted to speak about that, because we do fight amongst ourselves, and we do, sometimes try to undermine each other. And I think you have noticed that a little bit, but I don't know if you've noticed as much as me. But
no, I have definitely seen it online, and within any community there are going to be points of disagreement, as to the direction that we should go in, as to what should our messages be, and down to who should be speaking on people's behalves as well. I do my best not to, speak over the communities that I'm not part of within my activism. I try to strike that balance, and that I try to make sure that the messages that I convey are in line with what other trans people have been saying. It's very tricky, but I've turned down media appearances myself. I've had invites from those media outlets like Talktv, GBnews, and other places, but I've turned them down, and have always given details of like other trans people who I think they should asked instead, and they always come back with and say, oh yeah, we've tried to ask them but they didn't want to appear on our show, and I'm like, well, why do you think that is? There's a reason why they don't want to speak on your show.
It's like there are certain people that do always get invited onto shows, and it's not because they just want to talk over people. It's because media people are very lazy. And what I've learned from working in the media is the producer will just go to the first person's name they have on a list. So that person is often Peter Tatchell, because they're so lazy that they'll just Google or they'll just look in their directory for LGBT activist or LGBT rights, and he will be the first name that comes up. And if he doesn't answer the phone, it'll go to the next person down the list that might be a better person. But I just don't like this thing of like, if okay, I understand why trans people don't want to go into the media, because it's a very difficult thing to do. People take you apart. People comment on your appearance. This is just going to happen, and that is a very traumatizing thing if you're already insecure, which a lot of people are naturally. So when I have spoken to Peter Tatchell, and he has actually helped me, and he's sent me contacts with people. He said, you want to do this thing, and he's talked to me, and I think that's commendable to him, because he doesn't have to do that. Now, while I might disagree with him about some of the things he says, and he does say some pretty strange things sometimes, I think if we can't have that conversation, if we just cut people off and say, you've got to admit Peter's got a bit of a pedigree in activism. He's been on the front line of a lot of battles, and I think that's worth respecting, even if I disagree.
I think, no, completely. No, I agree with everything you just said. Peter has been instrumental in, campaigning for LGBTQ plus people, and we should thank him and applaud him for that. He has received a lot of criticism, it very recently, for some of the things he said. I think where he might be, steering in the wrong direction, and where some other people might be steering in the wrong direction, is where he doesn't listen to the community and take on board the advice. I've not got everything right all the time, and we're humans. We're not supposed to get things right all the time, and it's impossible for us to be right all the time. So whenever somebody, and often it's just been like a miscommunication of tone or message, where I've probably not been as clear as I could have been in some of my posts, and whenever that's pointed out to me, I'll always engage with the person directly via direct message. And something like this only happened recently. I engage with that person directly, and then I'll delete that tweet, and then take a picture, screenshot that tweet, and then post it with a reason why I deleted it, and just explaining myself as to the actual message I wanted to convey was not as clear as what it should have been.
Yeah, it's easy to misword things and make things open to interpretation, but I've made that mistake of going in quite heavily on somebody. I won't mention anybody's names because I'm quite a good friend with them now, but I did sort of slag them off, and then after a while I got to know them, and I thought, I'm sort of regretted that I did that now, because you were trying to learn something, and my abuse of you isn't going to make you learn it, is it? You know what I mean? It's not, me ranting and raving about why you're such an ignorant person is just, I've got a better way of dealing with that now. But I think sometimes as trans people, we feel like the whole world is talking about us all the time, and the whole media is rigged against us. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I get that my mum gets the Daily Mail, right? So I sort of borrow, and the Daily Express and all these papers, and it's like the Daily Express is one of those ones. I think it's got a hotline to J.K. Rowling and because all they have to do is click the fingers, and they'll have like Mayor Forstater on the cover of the Express making some stupid pointless point. But this I'm just referring to something directly now, because the story about the doctor in Fife and the nurse. Dr. Upton. See, when I read the transcripts of that, I think this should have been sorted out just by basically splitting these two people up. Because if you can't get on with somebody in a workspace, or if there's some vexation, please just don't let these people work together. That's all that needed to happen. But I think that, there's so much media mileage to be made about the trans issue now, and so much money to be made by these lawyers, that's why it becomes this thing. And
I think there's two distinct points there. Is that this idea of people being silenced is a myth, especially anti-trans voices, and the second point being that anti-trans activism is a career for people.
It is, yeah.
Now, these big sort of anti-trans activists who you've mentioned, they've made a career and a livelihood out of trying to remove trans people's rights. So therefore, that's why they're getting the media attention that they have been, because they're able to focus their time and effort and money and get backing from people to be able to get these spaces and these places. Whereas a lot of LGBT activists, we're often time poor, we're often resource poor. Talking about Equality Amplified, this is something that myself and Matt do within our limited spare time. It's not our full-time day job. I'm glad you've come on to
that, because the Equality Amplified thing was one of the main things I wanted to talk about. So, within all this kind of media noise that we have to deal with, I think it's amazing that you are doing this, because I know sometimes it feels like a massive uphill struggle to get the kind of coverage that you want. But can you explain how Equality Amplified came together?
Yeah, sure. So really, I know Matt, who's the co-director. We sort of been speaking online for a couple of years. We've been engaging with each other's posts, etc. And we were just talking one evening, about a year and a half ago now, and just saying that everyone on these spaces, we're all saying the same things, and we're all trying to get the same message out there, but we're not as organised as the anti-trans voices are. They've got a good selection of big names. They've got a couple of established organisations that are getting the ear of politicians, of the media, and they're able to penetrate in those spaces and trying to affect their change. Whereas a lot of our organisations who should be representing us are really sort of struggling with that. Yeah. So we wanted to try and create something a bit more formal that could bring people's voices together under one sort of professional looking outlet. And we thought, we've got nothing to lose. Like if we don't try something that's proactive and actually works towards something material, then we'll never know. And I just didn't want my activism just to be shouting into the void online. I wanted to try and make it something tangible. Yeah. So we thought, why don't we give it a go? Why don't we try and set up an organisation that tries to amplify our voices and bring them together in some way?
That's great. I mean, it must be really difficult, because obviously, like we just spoke about, like say, what I don't like to use the phrase mainstream media. I think that's a bit of a lazy phrase now. I think I call it the traditional dominant media, and it's so hard, isn't it? Because younger people, they say younger people engage more with TikTok, with Instagram maybe, and social media in general, but you're finding that the right wing are also pretty savvy at getting in those spaces. So that's why I totally stopped using Twitter as a personal thing. I just don't. I mean, I've got a profile for research purposes, and I've got a TikTok, but I don't post anything personal, because I just find I find them all really difficult to navigate as somebody that's just trying to find positive information. I mean, if you want to watch people jumping off bungee ropes, it's fine. You know what I mean? If you want to watch generated AI content constantly and people doing skateboarding tricks, it's brilliant. But whereas the politics is missing from that, and unfortunately, it seems like people like Nigel Farage have stepped in, because their messaging. I think this is what happened with Trump as well. Is their messages can be very sloganeering and very simple and make America great again. Let's build back better. Let's, and all these, and we need strong messages like that. But it's but our messages are quite complex, because not only do we have to include a lot of people and not exclude, we have to show that we're open to change and diversity, and that can be in terms of marketing. That is. Because if you look at it, the actual history of marketing and advertising really is not it's not a liberal idea, is it? You know what I mean?
No, completely.
So I think this is where we have a problem, because We want
Completely.
strong messages, and we want slogans, but by doing that, I think the danger is we alienate people, because like Kelly J. Keane can say standing with women, you know, and
yes,
we know
I was gonna say that.
The word woman is like a shield, isn't it?
Yeah, this is it. Like when we're dealing with issues of sexuality and gender identity, these are very complex things. You know, these aren't, you know, easy things to understand for people who, you know, are LGBTQ plus. It's very natural for us to know what it means to be gay, know what it means to be trans. But when you try to explain that to people who don't really want to listen, it's almost an impossible thing, really. Then when you get people, you know, and organizations that rock up and wrap their transphobia into protecting women and girls or protecting women's sports, that's easy to understand, because they sort of perceive that sort of faux threat that they're throwing out there, and instantly they're like, well, there must be a problem. If we've got to protect women and girls, there must be an issue.
They're using the language of feminism, but they're recycling.
This is it. Well, they're using the language of feminism, but they're also recycling homophobic rhetoric as well, which is ironic, especially for a lot of LGBT people who happen to find themselves being anti-trans, that they're using this same rhetoric that was what ushered in Section 28, you know, calling people who support trans people groomers and paedophiles. It's all the same rhetoric, just wrapped up in a different bow.
I think that, well, it's not a problem. I was going to say it's a problem, but being trans to me is not an organizing principle for activism, because there's so many different trans women. My experience was I was seen as a gay man, a gay boy for a long time, and I came out among gay men who they said, oh no, you're a drag queen, you're not trans, what are you on about? Because they were questioning it, because obviously I had sex with men, and these men were like, well, am I bi now? It's like, no, it's just oh my God. So was this like weird, so because I was going out in Manchester since I was like 16, 17. So, but for some trans women, they don't have that experience. They may have been married to a woman for 20 years, and that changes you. But it's not. I'm not saying it's a lesser perception. What I'm saying is it's a different world. So the way I am when I'm body positive, the way I am because people have seen pictures of me in fetish clubs, for some people that's very grating. They don't understand that imagery. They don't understand that kind. So I've got to be really careful, and I wasn't careful. Because I'd be trying to communicate with like, say, more elder trans people, or I was thinking about, the group Translucent.
Yes,
and I love Steph. I love everything they do. This is not a criticism, but there are certain blind spots they have to the way I understand the culture. So my point was that just because I'm trans doesn't mean that I can be representative of trans people. So like when I was going
completely. And I think that point is really interesting, because a lot of arguments against LGBTQ plus people being visible is, they always say, oh, like why do you have to politicize your identity, or why do you have to shove it in our faces? And the only reason why our identities are politicized is because they have to be, because we don't have equality. Well, exactly. If we had equality, if trans people were left alone and had access to the healthcare that they need and had their rights enshrined in law properly, there would be no need to politicize ourselves, but we're forced to, because we have to try and fight for those rights.
Yeah, and I think some people there are some genuine journalists and people, like, because I was writing to people at Novara Media, Byline Times, and I felt like I was knocking on that door, and it was like I was a dog barking from the outside. Let me in. I've got some things to say here. You're talking about trans people, but you don't have a trans person in the studio. That was my sort. But it's like there are people with good intentions, but there are certain things they don't see, and it's not because they can't see them. It's because they're looking at politics with a very wide lens, whereas I'm looking at it and I'm looking through a very narrow sort of telescope in a way, because the thing that is directly affecting me is probably the thing that I'm seeing, whereas for somebody that is like a news organisation that has to cover several different stories in a day, they're not going to focus on the trans thing. And I think it's right that they don't most of the time, because most of the stories about us are bullshit. You know?
Well, yeah, completely.
Yeah.
It's all misinformation and hyperbole and false narratives, you know. And the fact that the media continue to platform anti-trans voices and non-trans people when they are talking about trans issues just shows how actually disinterested they are in actually having balance.
There is something I do have to mention, is that you've come under the wrath of J.K. Rowling quite a few times.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because she's actually quote tweeted me tonight, and I'm currently looking at my Twitter feed and seeing a lot of notifications of people tweeting at me, calling me the R slur, calling me a pedo, calling me a groomer. I'm just waiting for the death threats to come in, because usually they start to come in right about this time.
Well, J.K. Rowling has famously said, "Oh, I could paper my house with death threats." I was like, "What? You printed the same one out 500 times, did you?" So. It's funny you say. Funny you should mention that when she's decided to quote tweet me tonight. But it's funny thinking about J.K. Rowling, because anyone who knows me personally knows how much of a huge Harry Potter fan I was growing up. Well, I didn't know that actually.
No, massive. I was a huge Harry Potter fan growing up. The little queer boy growing up in Kent. That was my sanctuary.
There's this thing about Harry Potter, though, just to break into that a little bit. Sorry, but I've got to say, what is Harry Potter about? It's about young people that self-actualize, have something intrinsically different about them that is sort of magical, that nobody understands, and they become powerful, and they overcome the odds, and they go through a sort of catharsis to become. And what is that? That sort of feels like being gay and growing up to me.
100%. It really is. And that world is the world I escaped into when I was being bullied. I
think that's why a lot of gay and trans people do like Harry Potter.
Yeah, it is. It's the escapism of it. It's the magicalness of it. And it was about. So I'd finished. I studied English and creative writing at undergraduate university. Harry Potter was one of the main reasons that I wanted to sort of get into writing. I'd done my master's part time in creative writing as well, and I was always looking at wanting to sort of do a PhD as well. And I'd always been sort of writing about queer things and the LGBT experience. Like my undergrad dissertation was on conversion therapy. My master's dissertation was a sort of a little biopic of.
So you're doing your PhD now? Is that right? Sorry.
I am, and it was J.K. Rowling's essay on gender, which kind of sparked my
you see, I did not know
idea.
That's amazing.
So
I just wonder, like, I don't think J.K. Rowling's ever going to hear this, but I just wish that there must be a spark of something that, because I don't think I don't want to believe that everybody is without empathy. But I think sometimes the reason they demonize us and the reason they have to keep looking at these kind of, comparing us to sexual predators is to make the hate flow easier. Because if there's a slight chink of doubt, if there's maybe I've got it wrong, that would destroy everything, So it's like they have to constantly fuel the hate with like finding the worst possible scenarios, like compiling images of like trans people that are sexual predators, and it's like, no, maybe it's not.
I think that's what it's what I've seen J.K. Rowling and other anti-trans activists do online, is that they're constantly equating trans people with abusive predators and often abusive cis men as well, not even trans people. And then the more they do that, and the more they push that false narrative, then that's when the lines become blurred, doesn't it? And then that's suddenly when the narrative becomes that all trans people are predators, or the only reason why a trans woman would want to enter a women's toilet is to commit abuse, which we know is a complete load of rubbish because there isn't the statistics to back that up.
I would sort of add to that as well. It's like what they'll say is, oh, like all the statistics say that men are sexual predators, so and trans women are men. So, but I was saying, boys are not born abusers. Boys are not born rapists. They learn it through a series of misogynistic things that it's like boys are sometimes unpunished for their misogyny, and it's not that it's unpunished, it's almost celebrated in the culture now to be more misogynistic. So it's that we should be looking at, because when these 100%. when people say men and when they say boys are a problem, it's not that bit that's the problem, because by saying that, it's almost like saying there's something innate in men or boys that makes, because that almost says it's natural for men to be abusive, and it's not. I mean, I'm sure there are lots of good women that are abusive, and there are obviously situations where women have been abusive, but they're not punished in the same way. I mean, and that's another kind of misogyny. It's the misogyny that says somebody like, Lucy Letby, how could she be a murderer? She's a lovely lady with blonde hair and she's a nurse. That's a misogyny, because it's saying that, this is, I know this is a really complicated subject, but what I'm trying to say is really that the misogyny works in, it excuses the behaviour of men and makes it almost seem like normal. And then it ignores the abuses of women, because it says that women cannot be that, and it's like when trans women somewhere sit in the middle going, I just want to go to the bus stop and not get abused on the way. Do you know what I mean? That's all I want.
This is it, and this is what really shocked me about J.K. Rowling's initial essay, is just how her inability to listen to trans people who were trying to help her understand why the things that she was writing about and saying were wrong and inappropriate, and the way that she just takes these casting narratives of rapists and abusers and uses that to compare to trans women to try and demonize and criminalize them. That's what really shocked me. And that's what really sparked me to try and start writing more about sort of trans and queer experiences, and that's where sort of I started to get my idea for my research and my PhD as a form of sort of combating this
really
thing that who was my hero initially to try and combat this.
Yeah, just to cut in there. So I mean, you were saying about creative writing. I mean, I'd love to know more about that, because I write, and I wouldn't say I don't know if I'm a good writer or a bad writer, because I have nothing, like I've never studied like English literature or anything like that. I kind of write just as I feel. But have you written, like, are you publishing anything, or is there anything that I can read, because anybody's listening to this can read?
So I had a few sort of short stories and that published here and there for competitions. I don't think they're still being print, because they were sort of printed off on like a limited sort of run. But obviously my main focus at the moment is just getting my PhD sort of finished and submitted. So that's where all my writing time is going to at the moment. But I did start a blog at one point with writing on that. I found quite difficult to keep up with. But at the moment I'm just focusing on getting my thesis finished, really. Well, that's where sort of all my writing's going to.
I like to write poetry, and one of my poems got me in trouble with the LGBT Alliance, because when I used to work for the ambulance service, and I wrote this poem called Transgender, Lesbian, Sperm Producing Female.
Do you know what? I've read it. I've read it.
And the point of the poem is really it's an attack on language, and it's a deconstruction of words, and the way it's like a performance piece where it's like a train coming, so it's like transgender, lesbian, sperm producing female. Anyway, Bev Jackson wrote to my employer to say, how can somebody that works for the ambulance service not know that a lesbian is a biological female? And I was like,
that's quite ironic, considering that the narrative that they try to push is that we're the ones trying to get people fired and trying to, trying to kick, so-called gender critical people out of their jobs, when actually, in fact, it's the other way around. Like, I've had, anti-trans activists complain to my university to try and kick me off my course.
Yeah.
Because of, my criticisms to J.K. Rowling and other anti-trans activists. And I know other people as well who've had, their work contacted because they support trans people online. And I think, again, it's that just false narrative that we're the attackers and we're the abusers, when in fact it's the other way round, that we're the ones who are losing our jobs, and they're trying to get us fired.
I mean, it's so annoying, because historically, not too long ago, you wouldn't have been able to come out as trans at work. You would not have been able to and obviously these people are such, like, they live in some kind of middle class bubble where, like, I remember, like, the first jobs I had, you had like a 0 hours contract, and if they didn't like you, you were gone. This is the reality we live in. It's like when Maya Forstater goes on about losing a job for saying trans women are men. She didn't lose a job because of that. She lost a job because she was vexatious, and she was there to do some fucking tax job, and she brought her whole self to work, ironically, and it's like, oh, it's so frustrating, because the reason they attacked me really is because I was working for the ambulance service, and I was doing like trans day of visibility with them. I was doing like so they hate anything like that, because for me, when I was a kid, when I was young, the only time I saw trans people on telly, they were either prostitutes, or they were drag queens, or they were some exotic thing from far away. I just wanted to see somebody doing a normal job being trans, and that's why I did those inclusivity days. It wasn't because I wanted to be all over Twitter. It was because I thought of myself when I was 7 or 8 years old, or whatever it was, and I just wanted to signal to that kid it's going to be all right.
No, completely. And we mentioned Equality Amplified in my PhD, but I also work a very corporate job as well, and I've worked in various corporate environments for the past 9 years, and it's hard being an LGBTQ plus person in the workspace, especially the sector I work in, which is predominantly male, white, heterosexual, cisgendered driven. It is hard to bring your full self to work in that place. And very early in my career, I found myself having to police myself a lot of the time in my behaviour. I had to find myself wearing a full suit and tie every single day, which is definitely not me.
I think that's true of anyone, though, isn't it? Really, I think.
Yeah, literally, and there's always a line at work. You have to keep an air of professionalism, but if you feel uncomfortable sharing stories of what you and your same-sex couple did at the weekend, then that's an issue with the culture, and it shouldn't be that way, because all research suggests that when you can be yourself at work, you are more productive.
Yeah,
and you're better off.
Yeah.
So the fact that now we have these D&I positions within workplaces, and we have LGBT work streams and women's inclusion work streams within a lot of corporate workplaces, it's fantastic. I've been a part of these LGBT D&I groups in the places I've worked at. I've helped chair one of them, and it's always been such a joy and a privilege to be able to help people understand what it means to be LGBTQ+, but also to try and make the workplace an environment where you can be yourself at work. And I think what a lot of these anti-trans activists don't understand is that you can't just say what you want with impunity, and we've seen this in the judgments of a lot of these cases, like even in the Maya Forstater case that you mentioned. The judge said that despite the outcome of that tribunal, you still can't misgender trans people with impunity.
Yeah, I mean it's just to me it's just a case of like, would if you're going to draw unnecessary attention to somebody, why are you doing that? Because to me, it wouldn't matter if the person had ginger hair. It wouldn't make any difference to me. If somebody was pointing at, it's like what we tell children: don't point at strangers. And these people don't understand that basic rule. And you know, if you're going to draw attention, I can't help being who I am. You know, I can't undo it. There may be times in my life where I was less confident about it, but it was always there. I can't not be trans. So if somebody in a workplace is drawing attention to that for no reason, I should be able to say, actually, no, I don't care if if you think I'm a man or a woman. I just want to get on with my job.
This is it. And you know, trans people existing, it does not harm anyone. You know, trans people have existed across time and across geography and across history.
Yeah,
that is a fact. And if there is a trans person in your workplace, so what? Like they're not going to do. They're not there to harm anyone. They're not there to abuse anyone.
I think.
And if they. Sorry, go ahead.
I think this is why they always make it about bathrooms and single-sex spaces, because that is where they can say, well, it's a danger, you know, you're presenting a clear and present threat. You know, it's like, no.
Yeah.
I mean, why? What I always think of when they bring that up is why if I was in a bathroom or a toilet, I'm not looking at anybody. I'm there to do something functional, you know. And the reason I don't go in the men's toilets is because I don't want to draw unnecessary attention to myself. If I went into a male toilet in a regular workplace and there are men stood up at a latrine like men do, I don't want to walk in there looking like I do and put them off their flow. You know what I mean? It's as simple as that. You know what I mean? It's like,
completely.
I mean, I've been out in clubs in Manchester where people just piss up the walls. I don't, you know what I mean? And that's the women.
and this is the thing, like, you know, when you really drill down into what these anti-trans activists are campaigning for, is that they're campaigning, you know, to push trans women into men's spaces.
Yeah,
but then also to push trans men into women's spaces. And it just makes you laugh, because are you seriously going to be happy when a masculine presenting trans man enters a women's toilet and uses that in your space? No, of course they're not. And so when you really drill down into what these, you know, anti-trans activists want, they have no actual solution to these fake problems that they create. And that's what really enrages me, is the fact that they rely on misinformation, they rely on hyperbole, they rely on bad anecdote, and they have no actual solutions to these problems that they've created.
I would say, though, like, from my point of view, my attitude is always an attitude of de-escalation, and I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable. That is my point of view. So, like, when I used to work for the ambulance service, if I was working with a lady and she said to me, I want to see female-only staff, I would totally have to flag that up, because not only do I don't want to put that person, for whatever reason, you know, people are allowed to discriminate in that situation however they want. But you've got to be mindful of the fact that people are from different cultures. They don't fully understand. And I'm always fully aware of all of these things. I don't barge into spaces. I don't announce I'm a fucking woman. You have to call me a woman. I don't do. Trans women don't do that. We're very, like, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, like I said earlier, but most of the trans women I know are very shy, timid creatures when they're in public, because we just don't want to draw attention to ourselves. And I'm quite unusual in the fact that I like attention. maybe it's the drag queen that I used to be, but when I'm in public, when I'm out shopping or when I'm just in town, I'm just trying to get from A to B. Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to cause a problem for anyone. Yeah. I'm not trying to impose on anyone. But TERFs think that it's like I'm some kind of like, you know, cruise ship docking and everybody has to get off, you know. It's like, no, just ignore me.
Well, they just see, you know, trans women's existence as some mortal threat to their very womanhood and their very rights.
It's what I call the luxury vexation of the petit bourgeois.
Yes, very much so.
That's what Rowling is. So. But it's not. I'm just like going through a few magazines. I'm talking to you, but this comes out of this kind. This whole cancel culture thing, and people like Jeremy Clarkson are always like, "Oh, you just can't say anything anymore." So I was like, "No, you can say whatever you want, but there are consequences of saying certain things." And I think if you remove those consequences, if you remove the consequence of being misogynistic, if you remove the consequence of being homophobic, if you remove the consequence of being transphobic, what does it tell our children? Because they will only learn what they will mirror their parents. Now, my worst fear is the people that watch Talktv or GBnews. Their children are listening to that, and their children are listening to their parents and what they're saying online. And I think that's a safeguarding issue, because if I won't get into my own family too much, but my dad was racist, and I would challenge him on these things, and he used to quite like that I would challenge him. But I just don't think that always happens. I think some parents, would shout down at a child that said, "Why are you being racist?" You know what I mean? That's what worries me about the whole thing, because the hardest challenge for any gay person or trans person is that your family support you. And I see, because I do a bit of work with the LGBT Foundation, what I notice is that the people that come and see us are actually running away from a family. And I think that's really the crux of it for me. I mean, that they don't understand. Like, you're actually becoming the school bully. When you put these messages out that trans people are bad and or sexual predators, you becoming the school bully.
Well, this is a big point, isn't it? Like, I've received more homophobia in my lifetime in the past 5 years being active within LGBT activism than I have in my entire life. And I think that says a lot. And, even tonight, again, now that J.K. Rowling is quote tweeting me, I'm still seeing, people, my feed blowing up with, people calling me a paedophile, people calling me, the arsler, calling me mentally ill, and it just shows that they don't really care about women. They don't care about protecting children. They just want someone to hate and to target and to beat down. And if your rhetoric, J.K. Rowling, all these other active anti-trans activists, if your rhetoric is emboldening homophobia, transphobia, ableism, all of these things, like, what is your rhetoric actually saying, and what are you actually doing with your time and your words? It can't be for anything good.
Well, I mean, there are certain trolls, and I feel sorry for them, because I think there are some very disempowered people. Like, there are some very insecure people, and maybe some people that are gender questioning or questioning their sexuality, and they just don't know how to deal with it. But rather than being educated, rather than being told, look, it's okay to feel the way you feel, they're being emboldened to be the worst possible people. Because what does the algorithm reward? It doesn't reward understanding. It doesn't reward... Yeah. The algorithm doesn't reward somebody going, actually, no, I might read that and I might go away and think about it. Nobody's doing that. It's going, this is the thing that's going to make you angry, and if this makes you angry, here are some more things that make you angry. And that's you know what I mean? So if I could do anything, sometimes I wish I could reach through the screen at somebody and go, look, I don't hate you, I just wish you would shut up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, no, I get it. And we're seeing this across social media, though, aren't we? Facebook or Meta, they've rolled back their protections, haven't they, recently?
Yeah. Well, this is
what was the policy? I can't remember what it was called.
Do you mean the internet safety thing?
Yes, that was it. Yeah, and what sort of terms and that were no longer going to be flagged, etc. And anti-trans activists were celebrating this because now a lot of transphobic rhetoric was permissible on Meta, but at the same time, a lot of misogynist rhetoric was also permissible through these policy changes. Well, again, it just shows that they're not really interested in this so-called protecting women, because they're quite happy to forego their own protections in order to be hateful towards trans people.
It's true. I mean, this is something I did want to bring up, actually, and I think it's really important to bring up. It's the influence of American politics onto British culture. Because obviously with the election of Trump, I was in New York on the 5th of November when Trump was elected.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you saw my pictures. I actually went to Trump Tower because I was interviewing people. I was determined to interview MAGA people and write it. I did a whole blog about it. And I think there's something in me that is a bit Louis Theroux, where I'm like putting myself in places where I know I'm not quite welcome, but I you know what I mean? It's like there's something about, like, so I was very impulsive. I just thought, right, I've got a bit of money from something I got some money from something I sold on eBay. I went to New York, and the reason I went at the time, I knew because it was because of the election, and it was like so intense because nothing can prepare you for seeing Confederate flags and seeing "Make America Great Again." But when I was observing it, I was looking at it, and it was like this feels like, when you watch American wrestling. Nothing felt quite real. It felt like it was removed from, people compare it to fascism of the 30s and the 40s, but I don't think it is. I think it's some sort of
there's a new celebrity to it, and there's a new sort of performativity to America, to American politics that we just don't have in the UK. Like, our politics is so dry. Like, the most exciting thing was the fact that Liz Truss lost out to a lettuce. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the most exciting thing that happens in our politics. But American politics is so performative. It's so wrapped in celebrity and glitz and all of this stuff. Partly because Trump is a celebrity first rather than a politician.
But it's but there are real ramifications because, like, obviously we've seen on social media with Musk obviously boosting pretty much what we would call traditionally neo-Nazis. And it's and you've got to question, like, if you can normalize a Nazi salute, if you can normalize that, what else can you normalize? Because I was talking about this with somebody, and I was saying, does this mean they are Nazis, or does it mean that they are? Because when they did the original Nazi salute, we only know it's a Nazi salute now because of history. But it's kind of a postmodern breaking down of ideas that gives us this now. And when these people talk about post-structuralism or, like Marxism, what they call cultural Marxism and all these things, it's them that are indulging in it, not us. We're trying to find the authentic. We are drilling down to try and find where the authentic thing is, where these people are playing performative, neo kind of postmodern politics where nothing means anything anymore. Like, we can do a Nazi salute because it's trolling. We can call people the N-word, like because Kanye West can do it and he's a black man. It's like it's them that are indulging in this kind of deconstructivism.
It's the palatability of fascism is quite alarming in America right now. I feel like we can see it a bit more because we are a bit more that removed, and our culture is still very different to American culture. But the way that they're making fascism and Nazism more palatable is scary. The fact that Elon Musk can do a Nazi salute on to the whole world and not receive any ramifications of that. That's terrifying.
Yeah, but
these people are in power, and that's even scarier.
I think the scary thing is, though, there's a generation of young men, and traditionally, you see, when you have fascism, when you have I won't call it fascism, I'm going to call it nativism, and I'm going to call it a kind of ethno-nationalism, because you see that you're starting to see that where this idea of being English has come up into the conversation today. What it means to be British, what it means to be English, and and J.K. Rowling was posting about, so you don't know what a woman is, but you know what English is, and stuff like this. And I say, well, for one thing, there is everybody, no matter what your nationality is, we're all on the same gender spectrum. So it's got nothing to do with that, And I worry about young men and boys because, the reason I focus on young men and boys is because it's them that are going to suffer. I think if in a worst case scenario where we're at war with Russia, it's them that are going to suffer. You know what I mean? It ain't going to be me at 45 years old as a trans woman. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, this is the thing. Like everything that we do within our activism is to ensure the next generation of young people are not suffering the way that past generations have, and that's the entire aim, isn't it? We're doing this so we don't have to do it anymore, really.
But you see,
nobody has to speak out again. But I'm similarly concerned with how young men are being influenced by this behaviour.
On that same point as well, though, that's true. But I get messages, I get DMs from young boys, young men, like say in the 20s. And they're like, "Oh, I've never spoke to a trans woman before." And it's like, well, I'm no different to her. But they're trying to flirt with me. And when I look at the profiles, they're following Tommy Robinson. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? Like, why? Why are you doing this? And I'm very open about it. I used to do sex work, and a lot of my clients were married men. They were what you would call pretty straight down the middle straight men. They'd have a wife and kids, and they would tell me about it. And I was like, well, why do you feel the need to do this? Like, and I think that under the surface of what we call normal society, and it's a very thin surface, is all this. And I think that's what frightens them. The fact that I can be open, the fact that I can be trans and talk about it, the fact that you can be gay and talk about it, the fact that I can talk about sex work, I can talk about sexual health, I can talk about body positivity, that frightens them because they can't do it. I think that's part of the problem. Yeah,
and I think that's what frightens a lot of older people as well. And I think it's that sort of that sadness that they felt that they can't be as open as what we are now. They didn't have the same opportunities, because you see, if you look at the demographic of like anti-trans activists, you'll see that the majority of them are white older women. And I feel like a lot of it is they're just not happy that they just didn't have the same opportunities that we have in terms of bodily autonomy, and the freedom to be ourselves. And I do feel like there's a little bit of jealousy in there in what they say, because they weren't afforded the same freedoms that we have today, and now they're working actively to take away those freedoms.
Yeah, there's a kind of bitterness, isn't there? Like,
there is.
I think there's a generation of people that are very well-to-do, sort of upper middle class, and historically they would have been sort of philanthropists. They would sort of open libraries and do something good, but they're not doing that, are they? They're doing the opposite. They're like saying, how can we make our mark by being as horrible as possible? Like that, when I see Kate Barker and Bev Jackson. That's the only thing, because these are not people that have to do anything really, is it? They could put so much time and energy into something positive. And I'm thinking,
this is it. And it's like when you have organizations who pretend that they are advocating for LGBT rights, when in fact all of the work they're doing is to remove trans people's rights. It's like you could actually be advocating, it's possible to advocate for LGBT people without tearing down trans people. Like it's a very possible thing to do. Yet these organizations, for some reason, don't seem to be able to distinguish those facts.
I think another thing is, when you see LGB without the T, or these slogans like gay, not queer, I think what it is, I think there is I've got to be careful what I say now, because I'm not saying that is good. What I'm saying is I can understand where it comes from, because I was part of a group in Manchester that was called Take Back Pride, and it was the commercialisation of Pride, the corporate takeover of Pride really bothered me. And I thought this should be a community thing, and it didn't feel like a community thing anymore. Okay, it's okay if you want to go into Manchester City Centre and you want to take a few pills and get pissed and dance to like Dua Lipa, brilliant, knock yourself out. But where's the activism? 100%. So there was these groups called like Take Back Pride, and I'm sure you've heard of Alex Bramham. Now, that's how I met Alex Bramham, because he was political. I liked him because he used to just talk about politics all the time, but he became sort of self-destructive, and I didn't understand it. But see, I'd met him sort of on the same path. Like, I don't like Pride; it's full of straight people, right?
Completely, yeah.
But the problem was he didn't see, right, we need to support trans community. Do you know what I mean? It's like, no, he got involved with the LGB Alliance, and I was like, no, this is shit. So I think that commercialization of Pride kind of, because it took the bottom out of what, because there would have, like the older gay men that I know, they always say, oh, you don't know, you've got it so good, we lived through AIDS, you don't know how good you've got it, so stop moaning. And that was their attitude to me. And I was like, well, honestly, I totally empathise with what happened. You know, I don't know what it was like for you because I didn't live it, but I understand it. But there was like saying, nah, you don't have to worry about anything. You've got everything on a plate, Freda. It's like, no, I've not. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we experienced this when we attended London Trans Pride last year. The difference between that and the normal London Pride was night and day. Like the fact that it was London Trans Pride was sort of community driven. It was really about the politics and the activism, and the people there were really fighting for something. Whereas as you said, Pride these days has become a commercial thing where brands and businesses are just buying their way into demonstrating their allyship without actually contributing to something meaningful. And I think we need to, as a group, take back control of these Pride events and really bring it back to its roots of a campaign. I think joy in the face of adversity is a really powerful thing.
It really is,
and it's a really powerful weapon. But to the extent where you've lost your message and you're no longer fighting for anything, that's where the problems begin, and that's where we sort of lose sight in why we're here and what we're fighting for and why we're organised. We're here to fight for trans people, to fight for LGBT people. We're not just here to sort of party with our friends and have a good time. There's a time and place for that, but I think now more than ever we really need to look at Pride and look at who we're platforming and maybe think, okay, maybe having a float from a big financial corporate isn't the best way to go about bringing LGBTQ plus inclusion. Maybe actually we could be doing something more constructive. And I think it's great that these corporates want to do this, but I do feel like the messaging has been lost along the way.
Yeah, because I mean, for trans people, we don't see ourselves reflected in the literature often. And it's okay to show two beautiful looking men with lovely muscles and all that. That is obviously lovely to look at, but we don't see ourselves on the poster. So and that is, it's not because we need some beautiful trans woman to represent us. It's just because we feel like politically we don't have a seat at the table. So that is why we can sometimes sound really angry. And I think the media play on that, because whenever we do protest and one of us, goes overboard and starts shouting, that's the shot they take. And then they'll go, look at these angry trans rights activists, they're complete lunatics. I was like, but my attitude is, yes, I am a complete lunatic. And the reason I'm a complete lunatic is because you drove me to it. That's why.
Well, this is it. This is what I mean. This is what people thought about, with the rise of Stonewall and the early Pride protests. That's exactly the same reaction that that we got then. But we
there are
only have the rights.
Frustratingly, there are some trans women out there that have said to me, "Freda, you've got to calm down. You can't keep going on GBnews and shouting at people." I'll say, "Yes, I can." And I go, I had a massive altercation with India Willoughby because I went on I did a debate with Helen Joyce, and I turned up wearing fishnets and a short dress, and she was like, "Why are you dressed like that?" I was like, "You're not my mother." You know what I mean? It's like, but it was so petty.
Well, I don't think we need to be policing each other's clothes. I don't think there's anything to be gained from doing that.
But it was so nothing. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah, I mean the fact that you put your neck on the line and did that in the first place, I think was really brave. Like, regardless of what you were wearing, and I mean, God, protests have always been, included some sort of body protest in the past. Feminist protests. Bearing their breasts and that in public, etc. It's such a historical thing to use your body.
Oh yeah,
that way within protest. Like,
if you look at
to discredit that form of protest is just, I think, is silly.
I was going to say, if you look at the feminist protests of people like Pussy Riot and Femen...
Exactly.
They're so good, because that's what we need. We need to be that powerful.
Yeah.
The left is so frightened of being seen.
Yeah, I think there's no right or wrong way to do activism. No rights for any group were gained by being polite and silent.
It's a very intense time to be alive, right now. And a part of me is like, because I used to read about Stonewall. I used to read about, these riots, and I used to read about protests. And I felt like that was so far away from me for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt like, oh God, that's history. That because like when I went to the Stonewall Inn, they've got a little museum there, and they've got like a video display, and it's like it's presented as history, but actually no, it's not history, because what we're seeing now, I mean, it's a different era, but we've not really moved on, have we? That's what we've regressed. We've regressed, and unfortunately,
this is the thing. I look back when I was at university. So I started university, when was it, 2013, I think it was. And I had such optimism as being an open gay man. I was living my best life at university. I met my partner. We would hold hands in the street. We would be affectionate with each other in public, etc. Now we police ourselves so much more.
Really?
I don't feel, we always check, if we are going to hold our hands in public, like who's around, where are we? And I that optimism that I felt those years ago at university has slowly sort of dwindled over the years, and it is a scary time. It really is.
It is. I mean, I hate to hear you say that, because that to me feels like we're going back in time. It makes me feel very, protective of younger people, especially, because I think it's good. I think we still need to, like, the work I try and do with the LGBT Foundation is really just to say this: if you want to come here, there's a day you can come, and you come and talk to people, and that is it. That's all you can do, because I've been part of groups with trans women, and we've been in like really weird situations where a friend of mine got attacked, and she was in the hospital, and I couldn't go and see her in the hospital because I knew if I did, if she wasn't out to her parents or anything. So when I was going to go, I had to decide if I was, because I could out her. Do you know what I mean, by turning up?
Yeah.
And it was really weird. And I think people straight.
Oh, sorry.
I'm not going to say straight people. I don't think that's the right term. But heteronormative culture people, they just don't understand that. They don't understand the secrets people have to have. To just, and they put, like, if you have to lie about where you're going, that puts you in a very dangerous situation, because and that was one thing that really made me want to get involved in community.
and I think this is why our visibility now is so much more important than it ever has been. Like, I think anyone who can be their true authentic selves, you know, within the workplace, in public, I think that's probably one of the most powerful forms of protest that we can do right now. That in the face of, you know, all of this adversity, all of these challenges to our rights, that we can still, you know, find happiness and joy in just simply being ourselves. I think is the most powerful thing. And I think, you know, not to want to be all doom and gloom and you know, try and have some sort of positive message. I think, you know, if you can be your authentic self, then do that, because you could inspire so many people just by living your, you know, happy LGBTQ plus self. And this is why, you know, LGBT History Month is important. This is why Pride Month is important.
Yeah.
Because then it reaches those people that might not have thought about these things before, and just you being that visibly happy queer person, confident in yourself, is just such a challenge to all of this anti-trans, anti-queer, anti-LGBT rhetoric that we're seeing now, that we can still live and be happy in the face of all of this adversity.
I think that's, you know, that's beautiful, because like I try to stay positive, and like that I try to send positive messages, but obviously I'm dealing with a lot of, you know, because I do a blog about what's happening in the news, and I've kind of become immune to it in a way. It kind of, I'm kind of like twice removed from it, because I'm seeing it from a journalistic eye, but I'm sometimes conscious of posts I'm putting out, because I was talking about, you know, when I had to talk about Brianna Jai, and I'm thinking, should this come with a trigger warning? Because obviously, you know, to me, it's like stuff that, you know, I'm used to seeing now, because I have to talk about it. But for somebody else, it might really affect their day, you know, in a very negative way. So you've got to be careful sometimes. The thing I really liked about the Equality Amplified is, like, you did a different post for each of the LGBT month. So one of my
History Month,
one of my favourite people was James Baldwin.
Oh yes,
because if you think about, like, I don't know if you've ever seen the video of the talk he did at Oxford. It was the Oxford Union.
Oh yes, I know the one you're on about.
And it was just because it was just one of those moments in history, you know. And I learned about that through the historian Simon Sharma, actually, because I follow all Simon Sharma's stuff. And yeah, I think sometimes it's good to remember these people from history, because.
Completely.
And because when I was talking about the history of Stonewall, and obviously they try to rewrite history and say, no, drag queens were nothing to do with it and all that. There was one person that stood out to me, and that was Jane County. I don't know if you've heard of Jane County, but she was like a punk in the 70s, and she came out.
Yeah, the name rings a bell.
She came out of the Andy Warhol factory group. And she was at Stonewall, and there's a really amazing video of her talking about what happened that night. And she was talking about the genital, you know, when the people check for genitals, like if you're a man or a woman. Yeah. And the police used to line people up and look at them and ask them to take their clothes off so they could tell if the drag queens were men or not. Like, people talk about transition and trans people, but I think the whole world is in some kind of weird transition, and it just can't work out what it wants to be. And it's like, you know. Yeah,
I think we're more polarized than we ever have been before. I think the lines between left and right are so much more distinct than they were when sort of I was, you know, growing up.
Well, I just want to say, you know, I think it's amazing what you're doing with the Equality Amplified, and I think it's really necessary and it's vital. And I want to thank you for your activism as well, because I think a lot of people don't get told thank you enough for the time and the effort they put in. Because I know personally, sometimes things can feel like, you know, an uphill struggle, and why am I bothering and all this. But actually, I think what you're doing is amazing.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that. I mean, you know, I'm not doing this for the thanks or the appreciation. You know,
I know.
That's not that's not why. But and thank you to you as well. The support, and you've given me and given the Equality Amplified has been great. Over these years, and just a little shameless plug that if anyone does want to contribute to what we're doing, then please reach out. We're always looking for people who want to write for us or want to help us with any sort of campaigns, or any sort of letter writing to MPs or organisations, whatever it may be. Everyone has a voice, and the most powerful thing that you can do is use it. Everyone has the ability to affect change. So if you do want to get involved, just go to our website, equalityamplified.org.uk. You can find all our contact details there, or reach out to me on X or Blue Sky at ThomasWillett9. And come and get involved, come and speak to us, and let's do some good work together.
Well, thank you, Thomas, for speaking to me today, and it's been great. So, whatever you do in the future, keep us updated, and I'll definitely be contributing to Equality Amplified. All right, bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Freda. Speak to you soon.